Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into a really fascinating moment in history, a time when thousands of people were absolutely convinced the world was about to end. And then, it just didn't. But what seemed like a massive failure actually led to this profound discovery about a key biblical idea, the sanctuary.
So let's start with a puzzle. Really try to put yourself in their shoes. Imagine basing your entire hope, your faith, everything, on a specific date for the end of the world, only for that day to come and go just like any other Tuesday. What would you even do next? Where do you go from there?
So this whole story really kicks off with a biblical prophecy that led a whole group of believers to a very specific and what they thought was a world-altering conclusion. Okay, so you have this whole movement, right? And they're looking at this prophecy in the book of Daniel. It talks about a period of 2,300 days. Now, using a principle where one prophetic day equals one literal year, they calculated that this huge 2,300-year period would end in 1844. And for them, the event at the end, the cleansing of the sanctuary, could only mean one thing: the earth being purified by fire at Christ's second coming. But then October 22nd, 1844 came and went. And nothing. Just silence. It became known, pretty fittingly, as the Great Disappointment.
This single verse, this was everything to them. It was their watchword, the very pillar of their faith. So when the day passed, they were just shattered and left with this massive question. What went wrong? Did the Bible fail, or did we just misunderstand something huge?
That profound letdown is what drove them right back to the scriptures. They had to re-examine that key phrase, the sanctuary. What did it really mean? And so their search began with the only physical sanctuary that the Bible describes in any detail here on earth.
And what they found was the tabernacle that Moses built out in the wilderness. God himself gave the instructions for it, and crucially called it a pattern of things in the heavens. So it wasn't just a fancy tent, it was a blueprint, a scale model of something else.
Now, this sanctuary had two main rooms. First, you had the holy place, where priests would go every single day as part of their ministry. But then you had the second room, the most holy place. No one went in there, except for the high priest, and he only went in once a year for this incredibly important final ceremony of atonement. Every piece of furniture, every service, it all had a specific meaning.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. As they studied this earthly pattern, they had a massive breakthrough. They realized they had been so focused on the copy that they completely missed what the prophecy was pointing to, the original.
The book of Hebrews just blows this whole thing wide open. It explains that the sanctuary Moses built was just a copy, a shadow of the true sanctuary, which is in heaven. That one wasn't built by human hands, but by the Lord himself. And in that heavenly original, our high priest isn't a man, it's Christ Jesus. And he is not offering the blood of animals, but his own precious blood.
So here's the crucial point, the game changer. There is a real, literal, functional sanctuary in heaven, not just a symbolic tent on earth. And that insight changed everything, because it meant the prophecy from Daniel probably wasn't about an earthly event at all.
And this discovery was the key that unlocked the whole mystery of 1844. If the real sanctuary was in heaven, then what on earth, or in heaven, did it mean to cleanse it? That was the next big piece of the puzzle.
And what's wild is that the Bible itself asks this very question. How could there be anything impure in a perfect heaven that needs to be cleansed? The answer just completely redefined everything for these early Advent believers.
They had this massive aha moment. They realized the prophecy wasn't about the earth getting cleansed by fire at all. It was about a final work of atonement happening in the heavenly sanctuary. See, the idea is that the sins that believers have confessed are, by faith, transferred and recorded in heaven. So the cleansing is this process of examining those records, a kind of investigative judgment, and then ultimately removing them for good.
So 1844, it wasn't the date for Christ's return to earth. It was the date he moved from the holy place to the most holy place in the heavenly sanctuary to begin this final phase of his work as our high priest, a work of judgment and final atonement.
All right, so how does this heavenly cleansing actually work? Well, to wrap our heads around it, we've got to go back to the blueprint, right? We look at that ancient earthly ceremony, the Day of Atonement.
This old ritual was a perfect illustration. Throughout the year, when a person sinned, they'd confess it, and that sin was symbolically transferred into the sanctuary. Then on one very solemn day, the Day of Atonement, the high priest would go in and cleanse the sanctuary of all that accumulated sin. And then he'd place it all on a scapegoat, which carried it away forever.
And this is a brilliant picture of the heavenly reality. Christ is our sacrifice and our mediator. The cleansing of the sanctuary is this investigative judgment looking at the records of our lives. And at the very end of it all, the confessed sins of the saved are placed upon Satan, the ultimate author of sin. He's the antitypical scapegoat who bears the final, ultimate responsibility.
So you see, the Great Disappointment wasn't really a failure of prophecy. It was just a profound misunderstanding of geography. The timing was spot on, but the place was wrong. The monumental event of 1844 didn't happen on earth. It began in the most holy place of the temple of God, in heaven.
So according to this understanding, that final work of atonement, this investigative judgment, isn't something way off in the future. It's happening right now. And that idea totally reframes our relationship with God, not as a future event, but as a present reality. Which leaves us with a final question to think about. How does this idea of an ongoing heavenly judgment change the way we look at our daily lives?